Coming up, an insider's look into natives at Facebook. Tuesday's primary election results, we break down which native candidates won and lost, and meet the makers of Mankiller, activist, feminist, and Cherokee chief. I am Mackenzie Ellen Charmley, filling in for Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is honored to be a supporter of Indian Country Today. ASU offers the only online undergraduate digital media literacy degree, teaching students how to recognize and combat inaccuracies on all platforms. They are using cutting-edge tools and tactics to separate fact from fiction in a digital world overloaded with misinformation. Learn more at cronkite.asu.edu.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Thank you for joining us. Aaliyah Chavez is away. Well, the lineup of candidates for primaries this year on the Navajo Nation and in Arizona will make for an interesting election season. Starting on the Navajo Nation, nearly half the presidential candidates this election cycle are women. The Navajo Nation, a matrilineal society, has never elected a woman to be president of one of the largest Indigenous nations in the country. 15 candidates are vying to be the next Navajo Nation president, including candidates Dolly Manson and Ethel Branch. Only the top two vote-getters in the Navajo primary will move on to the November general election. In Arizona, there are 5 candidates running for office, including Democrat and top contender Adam Hollier from the Muscogee Nation. Moving nationally, Tlingit Representative Deborah Lekanoff is the only Native American candidate, and she runs unopposed for her third term. We'll have more on primaries and the election season later in this newscast. It's hard to imagine, but just 1 year ago, no one knew the names Willie Jack, Bear Cheese, or Elora. Those characters burst on the scene in the breakout show Reservation Dogs and took Hollywood by storm. This unique show was nominated for several big industry awards as fans waited to hear if there would be a season 2. Well, last weekend, the world premiere of season 2 was held at the River Spirit Casino in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and our very own Caitlin Boycell was there on the red carpet.
Oh, thank you for your donation. Excuse me for my beauty now, for I shall give you some ancient Native American wisdom here.
Fans waited eagerly to see the stars from Reservation Dogs and get a glimpse of Season 2. The teens face many challenges, including growing up, cursing, and of course, getting help from aunties and uncles. Bobby Wilson, one of the creatives in the all-Native writers' room, told us that humor is used to address serious issues in Indian country.
You have to actually address these things. But what we do in the writing of this show and in the creation of this series is we talk about things without actually talking about them. We show how people live and how people are dealing with the aftermath of these types of traumas.
Willie Jag has some of the best comebacks in the series. Paulina Alexis, the actor who plays her, says Sterling Harjo, the co-creator of the series, encouraged her to improvise.
Well, yes, there is a script, but Sterling did give me the freedom to say whatever I want and whatever I want. Whatever Willie Jack would say, I would save your life, so.
This kind of classic Native humor really resonates with the audience at the premiere.
We got our own humor.
It was really funny, so I related to it so much.
Absolutely amazing.
Now fans can only hope that Season 3 will get that same treatment. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, Caitlin Onawa, Boycell, ICT.
Season 2 of Reservation Dogs is available to stream today on Hulu. In Mexico, Indigenous people are working to preserve dishes from their ancestors while competing with modern-day foods. Around 50 chefs, restaurateurs, and small traders took part in a pre-Hispanic food fair organized by Mexico City. The culinary fair promotes traditional dishes that are increasingly losing floor to foods like pizza and sugary drinks. One restaurant's owner's signature dish is known as Mexican caviar. The owner says the meal was served every morning to the Emperor Montezuma.
This dish is also known as Mexican caviar. Why? Because it's a sort of small egg, no bigger than a millimeter. This egg is deposited by an aquatic bug that lives in the center of the lake, the river, the lake area.
Many hope this revival will help young people who are losing the skills to cook and prepare their ancestral foods. And in Massachusetts, a group of Native student athletes took to the court to show off their skills. The First Light Scholar Athlete Program is in its pilot year. It was hosted by the Native Organizers Alliance. For 1 week, 14 Native athletes underwent a week of basketball training hosted by the University of Massachusetts. The athletes came from tribal communities in states like Utah, Montana, New York, Connecticut, and North Carolina. Organizers say the ultimate goal is to create exposure and access for Native students to widen their path into college athletics. This is important because in New England alone, there are over 100 colleges and universities who have basketball programs after the pilot year. Native Organizers Alliance says it hopes to expand the reach even further. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, one of the biggest tribal elections in the country happened Tuesday. We found out who is headed to the general election in November. At last, the critically acclaimed documentary about Wilma Mankiller has arrived to iTunes and Apple TV+. Director Valerie Redhorse and producer Gail Ann Hurd join us to talk about the film. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Good to be here.
Well, Gail, I'd like to start with you. Your film credits include The Terminator, The Abyss, Aliens, and The Walking Dead. So how exactly did you get involved with Mankiller and Native American issues?
Well, it was about 20 some odd years ago that I was serving on the Nickel Screenwriting Committee at the Motion Picture Academy, and I read a script about the Navajo Code Talkers. And I was absolutely fascinated, especially because I'd never heard of their heroism and their patriotism. And I was initially interested in telling the story as a feature film because that's my background. But then I realized it was more important to hear from the men themselves and not have actors play them while they were still alive.
And Valerie, this next question is for you. So Wilma Mankiller's leadership resonates today more than ever. Recently, the U.S. Mint issued a quarter to honor her. What do you want audiences to know about this remarkable woman?
Well, I would say everything. When Gail and I decided to make the film about Wilma's life, it continued our passion for telling stories that we feel history books may have ignored or certainly not covered appropriately in this country. And Wilma's leadership is one of those where many people might know her name, but not understand her legacy of incredible servant leadership. I think today's message that resonates so much is her ability to work with all types of people, not be divisive. She reached across the aisle. She worked with Democrats and Republicans. She worked with Native Americans and international entities. And really her goal was to serve her people and empower women and those that were underserved in general. And I just think her leadership style is something that we all can learn from.
Well, I 100% agree. This next question, Gail, is for you. I'm curious what you learned while producing this movie about the Cherokee leader.
Well, I think the first thing was, as Valerie said, how shocking it is that we aren't learning about her. We aren't learning about the Navajo Code Talkers, the Choctaw Code Talkers, another film that Valerie and I did together.
in school, in history books. It's as if there are whole chapters that don't exist, and especially so with Indigenous women. And it was important to tell a story that was hopeful, that showed that a woman who went from living in a car with her children on her ancestral tribal homeland could, within less than a decade, become the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation, is a story I think everyone can relate to. But there are so many heroes in the Native and Indigenous worlds that we've never learned about, that I felt it was really important to make sure that we could document them and leave this legacy for all time.
And Valerie, what is on the horizons? What's next for you?
Well, I want to say that one of the things I've really enjoyed about making documentaries with Gail is the ability to have a social impact message, some sort of call to action. So we were involved in the legislative action to get the code talkers recognized with our first film, which was amazing. With Mankiller, we partnered with a few organizations that promote women running for office, which we think is extremely important. And right now, I've been asked to direct a project on the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls on a global basis. You know, it's occurring not just in America and Canada, but in other Indigenous communities. And I'm working on a project that has a very strong call to action for a national database and more legislative action, as well as more law enforcement attention.
Well, that wraps up our time here. So thank you, Valerie and Gail, and I look forward to seeing the content you produce.
Thank you so much.
The movie Mankiller, which premiered on PBS stations in 2018, is now available for streaming on iTunes and Apple TV+. Social media has been a game changer for how we communicate, and Indigenous communities have wholeheartedly embraced and spanned the digital divide. From social distance powwow to finding new ways to sell artwork, natives are on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook is now Meta, and the company has a seat at the table for Indigenous people. Last year, ICT participated in its acceleration project. Shirley Snavy has this interview with Natasha Afia-Moore. She's Atka Aleut and Cherokee and project manager at Meta.
Well, welcome, Natasha. I'm glad you could join the ICT Newscast.
Thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
So let's talk about the big picture first. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you do at Meta.
I'm the first person in my family to go to college and receive a formal education. And prior to joining Meta, I worked in a lot of positions outside of the tech industry. I was in roles as a consultant focused on risk management, crisis management, corporate security, and political risk consulting. And through my journey, I garnered experience and expertise that has helped me in my current role as a project manager. In my current role, I work to combat issues and misuse on our technologies like bullying and harassment, hate speech, misinformation, and I get to work with global teams cross-functionally to make sure our users feel trusted, supported, and protected. I'm also a leader on the Native at Meta Employee Resource Group, where I get to represent Native voices and bring a unique perspective to my work in the trust and integrity space.
Native Americans are present everywhere on apps like Facebook and Instagram. And it's just been really interesting to see the way Native Americans have embraced the web and sharing things. I mean, social media powwow social isolation powwow when the pandemic started. That was just really something. So tell us about Native involvement at Meta.
Yes, absolutely. There are so many opportunities to work with Native and Indigenous employees at Meta. It's one of my favorite things about my current role and the company overall. For Native I serve as the finance and Bay Area chapter lead with the Native Leadership Council, which is an employee resource group. The employee resource group is made by and for Native employees from all intersectionalities, including our allies. And we are a group for the voice of people who represent Native Americans, American Indians, First Nations, Native Hawaiians, and all other Indigenous communities. Together, we foster a sense of community and belonging by sharing our stories with each other, celebrating our diverse cultures, and bringing awareness to issues that impact all Native communities. The Native Leadership Council is led by 7 other Indigenous leaders from all parts of the business at Meta in big cities like Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Austin, Seattle, San Francisco, and so much more. Our leadership council is always looking for ways to better serve our growing community. And recently we held a strategic workshop to discuss just that. We identified strategic areas that we wanted our leadership council to focus on, and that's namely community and culture. Through these focus areas, we'll be planning activities and events that raise cultural competency of the company by promoting inclusion, raising cultural awareness, and developing programs that connect Native with other external Indigenous communities and build internal relationships and engagement among our community members, our allies, both in person and virtually.
So it sounds like there's an opportunity to get involved with Meta no matter where you are. Like ICT, we have reporters from Washington, D.C. to Alaska, and it doesn't look like you're in an office right now on this Zoom call.
No, it's a great call out. Yeah, absolutely. It's working at Meta, it's like a fast-paced company where there are so many opportunities to add value at the intersections of social impact and technology. And I feel valued every single day at work. And personally speaking, I've never had the opportunity to come to work as my authentic self, to share my unique, diverse heritage and background with other employees in a community who are excited and celebrate that diversity and want to engage with that community. Diversity, equity, inclusion programs are highly influential inside the company at Meta, and they're also deeply aligned with our core values to support and empower Native people both on and off our platforms. Um, Authenticity with self, authenticity with the community is also highly encouraged and valued. And personally speaking, as I shared before, I don't come from the most obvious traditional technology background, but I can still make meaningful contributions at a tech company regardless. And we want to hire more Native voices in all parts of the business to do just that as well. Meta has exciting roles in communications and public policy, research, sales and marketing, creative roles, and so many others. And as you pointed out, I'm obviously not at home, or I'm not at the office, I should say, but I am at home, working from home, and I can still drive impact without being physically at an office. It's a core value at Meta that we can still drive impact, and it doesn't really matter where you are. It matters what you do, which is most important. And we also offer a lot of exciting opportunities for remote work in positions all over the world in places like US, Europe, and Canada.
I think that's one of the things that the pandemic has taught us is that, we can bring a lot to the table from our own homes. I mean, I'm actually at my daughter's house, but, to be able to join community. And I think that was really important during the pandemic that we were able to make these connections through Facebook and Instagram and feel a little bit closer, even though we were in isolation. Do you think do you feel that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing to see the Native community and Native users everywhere just thriving and connecting on all of our technologies, connecting with each other, communicating, growing their businesses. And so I'm happy to see that you're also experiencing that too.
And one of the things that ICT, then Indian Country Today, participated in was a nonprofit accelerator program that was offered through Facebook. And, we learned quite a bit and created a great partnership. And how can people learn more about that partnership?
We are hosting a series of virtual events with ICT to share the impact our Native community makes at Meta, including who we are, what and how we build our culture, our values, career opportunities, and most importantly, how to apply. Our first event is Wednesday, August 17th.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Natasha. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Shirley. Appreciate it.
To learn more about natives at Meta and the webinar, visit ictnews.org and search the diversity of native identity in the metaverse. Primary elections were held in 5 states on Tuesday. Those included Arizona, Kansas, Michigan, Missouri, and Washington. The Navajo Nation also held its primary election. So who won and who lost? ICT political correspondent Polly Danette-Claude joins us now to break it down. Hi, Polly.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So let's start off with the Navajo Nation. What kind of numbers are we seeing there?
So on the Navajo Nation, Jonathan Nez once again won by about 5,000 votes in the primary election. And so he's headed to the general election with a huge lead in that race. And then there's also Boo Nygren, who ran in the last election as a vice presidential candidate, didn't win there, but is now coming back again to run for president. And he got about 12,000 of the votes. And so those are the top 2 candidates in the Navajo Nation presidential election, and they will both head to the general election this November.
And are there any candidate polling numbers from the Navajo primary that are very surprising to you?
I feel like one of the things that was most surprising for me in this election was that one of the candidates, Justin Jones, he came in 3rd in the race, and then Ethel Branch, who was the former Attorney General for the Navajo Nation. And I really thought that those positions would be flipped, but Justin Jones did also do very well in the presidential election.
Moving on, could you tell us about the candidates running for the Arizona State Legislature?
Yes, so in the Arizona State Legislature, there is a district that had all Navajo candidates. There were no Republican candidates. It was the Democratic primary. And in Arizona, the top 2 candidates from each district for the House then head into the general, but each seat is represented by 2 people. So those 2 people who then go will be representing that district. And so all 3 of the candidates for District 6 for the House are all Navajo. So 2 Navajo candidates will represent that seat, will continue to represent that seat.
And taking it to the national level, could you touch more on what's happening in Kansas and Washington?
Yes, so particularly in Kansas, that's a really important seat nationally, because that is a seat that is a toss-up. And when it comes to the Democrats maintaining a majority in the House, that is definitely going to be one of the seats that is of interest nationally in congressional, let me look at my notes here. In Congressional District 3 for Sharice David's seat, she's going to be facing Republican candidate Amanda Adkins, who has been endorsed by several Republican candidates, including Cherokee citizen Yvette Harrell from New Mexico. And so she got some 90,000 votes, Amanda Adkins did. And this seat in particular, after redistricting, really got a lot more conservative votes. And so it's really a toss-up about who will win that election. And there are some analysis that show that Amanda Adkins is ahead in that area, but we will see at the general election.
And which other primaries are coming up next?
So before we go to that, one of the things that I did want to highlight is that Senator Adam Hollier from Michigan, he was in the Democratic primary and he actually was in second place. He's Muskogee, and he got 23% of the votes and came in second for District 13. And I think that is so phenomenal for that area. One of the things that I do want to note is that it is a majority Black district, and for the first time since 1955, there might not be a Black representative in Congress for that seat. So it was really great to see Hollier do so well. He was running against 8 other candidates, including a Democratic candidate who poured millions into his own campaign. And so I think that he did really well in that race.
Well, Polly, that wraps up our time today. Is there any final thoughts or comments on this election season that you just want to share with our audiences?
No final thoughts. Thank you so much for having me.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.